So let's talk about using M lenses on the M EV1. For me, this is when it all becomes really exciting. As far as I can see it, there are four main categories to discuss. We have the more extreme wide-angle lenses, we have the close focusing lenses, the extreme wide aperture lenses, and last but not least, the telephoto lenses. Now, these are all categories of lenses which can present challenges when used on the traditional rangefinder, particularly if you're less experienced. However, using those lenses on the M EV1 is an absolute breeze. So let's begin with the more extreme wide-angle lenses. For that purpose, I have the beautiful 21mm Summilux mounted on the M EV1. Now, if this lens was mounted on my M11 with a traditional rangefinder, my lens would be seeing more than I can view through the 28mm viewfinder. Now, a fair question to ask here would be, why didn't Leica incorporate a wider angle viewfinder to incorporate those wider angle lenses? After all, there are lenses all the way up to 16mm. Really, it comes down to the laws of physics. To incorporate such a wide view, the form factor of the camera would have to be that much bigger, and this was a compromise that Leica were not willing to make. Now, mount the 21mm Summilux on the M EV1 like so, and I have no such issues. I put the camera to my eye, and I am immersed in that 21mm field of view, plain and simple. And to be honest, I can now just get on and enjoy my photography. So moving on to those close focusing M lenses. Here I have a 35mm Summilux with the possibility to close focus all the way down to 40 centimeters. Now, if this same lens was mounted on my M11, the classic rangefinder, I would not be able to see any of that close focusing area. The rangefinder is limited down to 70 centimeters, so if I did accidentally move into that 40 centimeters, I would be shooting absolutely blind. Now, mount the lens on the M EV1. We can transition from 70 centimeters into that close focusing area without any issues whatsoever. And now that I also have those focus technologies at play, such as magnification and focus peaking, which will be particularly of use when working close because depth of field becomes that much more shallow, photographing is an absolute breeze once again. So what about the extreme wide aperture lenses? Here I have the absolute king, the 50mm Noctilux, which opens up to a staggering 0.95 aperture. Now, this lens is often regarded as the hardest lens to master. Why? Because it has an absolute insane shallow depth of field, particularly if you're working at the closer distances this lens provides. I remember using this 50mm lens the first time, took it away for a portrait project, and when I got back to the edit, I was actually choosing the images which were sharp rather than the best images. I realized that there was a technique to develop, and that would take some time. Now, mounted on the M EV1, again, no problem whatsoever. I see my full 50mm view. Again, we've got that focus peaking technology. I have my magnification, and it's probably not a statement you'd expect to hear, but shooting a Noctilux on an M camera is a piece of cake. So lastly, we have the more extreme telephoto lenses, and I actually have the most extreme lens in the M portfolio range, the 135mm. And again, on the traditional rangefinder, it can create some challenges in use. When mounted on the traditional rangefinder, of course, we then have to make use of a very small frame line within that big 28mm viewfinder. So although it can be used successfully, compositionally, it can have its struggles. Now, of course, when mounted on the M EV1, as usual, we are immersed in that 135mm view straight away. So what could often be described as more of a niche lens, probably not used as so often, is now suddenly a very viable option almost for everyday use. So from my perspective, the Leica M EV1 breaks down all the barriers to every single Leica M lens. Now let's consider that includes every single lens manufactured since 1954. That's an almost endless amount of possibilities in your photography.